My name is Honnacker and I'm a guest professor of philosophy of religion at the LMU Munich. And I'm a trained philosopher, and I understand myself as writing and teaching and doing research in the pragmatist tradition. It focuses on apocalyptic narratives as cultural criticism, and it's a contribution to environmental philosophy. And much of environmental philosophy and also of my previous work has focused on the question how to prevent the environmental crisis and ecological catastrophe. And what is really important for me and what has changed is that I take, you could say, the apocalyptic outlook on environmental philosophy. So the idea that we're already in the middle of things, in the middle of an ecological catastrophe, changes the way we address those problems and also the way we ask or should ask those questions. The attempts to address the crisis focus on the Anthropocene as a technological problem, so a problem that could be answered by inventing something. And to describe it and to understand it as a meta-crisis points to the fact that there's a serious problem on a deeper level, on a cultural level, and that there are cultural conditions that has to be addressed. So of course the technological dimension still plays a role. We have to find ways to mitigate and to adapt, for example, to climate change. And also usually there are models that explain the non-response by pointing to a lack of information or a lack of empathy. And to understand the Anthropocene as a cultural problem and a meta-crisis points to the fact that it's not just about giving more information or asking people to have more empathy or show more solidarity, but that there is a kind of cultural inability to integrate the information and to be affected by what happens around us. And this is where I want to start to do more research. Is of course on the first level helpful as a tool of communication to make clear how serious and how urgent it is to transform the way we live, consume, travel, work, everything, the whole thing. So this is one aspect, but with regard to cultural criticism, I think it's really fruitful to go back and refer to the original meaning of apocalypse. And it's not only catastrophe, it's not only the end of the world, it's also the transition to a new world, and this means it's also filled with hope. It's the hope that this world, which is not good, will end, and another world, a better society is possible and it will come. So this is the original Judeo-Christian meaning of apocalyptic thinking. And I think we really have a good tool here to have hope and for critical thinking. So the idea that there's another world implies that change is possible. And I think this is something that's perhaps in danger of getting lost in the current environmental discourse, because everything is so dark, and of course there's not much reason to have hope. So I think we should cling to those little things that imply that another world is possible, and apocalyptic thinking has this potential. But of course we should be dangerous with the promise of a better world or the belief that it will be necessarily or automatically better. And the question is, how do we get there? How do we get to the alternative world, the alternative future. This is not just the end of everything, not just catastrophe. And perhaps here apocalyptic and also post-apocalyptic narratives can give us scenarios, pictures, can be a vivid imagination of how the world that comes into being could look like. And of course we have all those dystopian scenarios that are more like, again, a warning. Look what you're doing right now and how this could end if you don't change. But there are also the more utopian scenarios that help to see how it could be and inspire people to long for this better alternative future and to disrupt all those understandings of how history will develop and how it will be only another version of what we have today. Give a better description and to provide a useful diagnosis of the ecological crisis and of the Anthropocene. But as a pragmatist philosopher, I'm also interested in making a real difference. So the second aim is to give a hint how cultural transformation could work. And I say cultural, so it's mainly on the social level, on the level of how we see the world. So it's questions of worldviews, of interpretation, of schemes and frames to grasp what is around us. And to be able to be in a different relation to the world, especially the natural world. But of course this is also implications on the political level, but I would be careful with like prescriptions. As a pragmatist philosopher, I'm very much on the side of democratic change. And this is nothing that can be done as cultural transformation, very quick or top-down. Blindness, I think, is a very useful concept to explain the non-response or the difficulties why we can't grasp the ecological crisis. And Günther Anders developed this concept with regard to the atomic bomb, but I think the dynamics that he described also apply to our current situation. And one of the things he highlighted is that we have an understanding of history that very much focuses on progress. So we think the future will be better and better, or at least not worse than the present. And I think this cultural scheme is still very active, even nowadays, with the ecological crisis in sight or happening around us. So there's an inability to interpret like the heat, the thunderstorms, the droughts, really as signs of a catastrophe happening and as small steps towards an apocalyptic scenario. We just cannot see it because we don't have the right interpretational scheme. That's why I think it's very helpful to have this idea of apocalyptic blindness. And books, and I think it's a good thing that there are more and more artistic manifestations of the idea that the world will end, because, as I said, that helps for cultural transformation. And speaking of those future scenarios, really one of my all-time favorites is still WALL-E. It's an animated movie and it's kind of depressing. It's not like denying what could happen if people don't change the way they treat nature and the environment. But it has this really strong, hopeful outlook. And I like this a lot, and I like animated movies, so this is one thing. And perhaps there are a lot of new novels coming out at the moment, and one of these is Helene Bukowski's Milchzähne. I think it's also translated Milk Tooth. This is a very bleak scenario, but it also shows very good what can happen if people still care for each other and show solidarity, and how important human relationships are in the face of catastrophe. So it's still possible to have a good life. So it's depressing and not depressing, and I really like the mixture of it, and I think it's really realistic. And of course, in terms of music, still, because it's so much kind of pinpointing my project, it's from KIZ, Hurra, diese Welt geht unter, because this track actually like shows where I want to go with apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic scenarios, like this critical outlook on the world as it is.